Coming up on this edition of Oliver North's Real American Heroes, my good friend Tim Lee. If you're not inspired by Tim's story, get your heart checked. Our guest today is Tim Lee, a real American hero and an active minister and full-time evangelist. He's ministered in 49 states and numerous countries around the world. He's been awarded 6 doctorate degrees, serves on the board of directors of Trinity Baptist College and the board of trustees for Liberty University. He serves on the National Committee of Veterans for Senator Ted Cruz. He's written 2 books and is a Fox News contributor. Most of all, Tim Lee is a real American hero and a dear, dear friend. You see, Tim's not your typical evangelist. He speaks from a wheelchair. Tim, welcome to our show.
Thank you, Colonel. It's an honor, always a joy, and a privilege to be with you.
Look, I know the answers to all these questions, but 49 states, which state have you missed?
Well, I missed North Dakota, but Lord willing, I'm going to be there in September. For years, I told them I wasn't even sure anybody even lived up there anymore, but sure enough, somebody lives up there, and they've invited me, and I'm going in September.
Terrific. Well, you get there in September, it's usually before it snows. That's the good part.
Yes.
Tim, give our viewers a sense of where, when, how it all came to be. How did you end up as a Marine? Where were you born?
Well, I was born and raised in southern Illinois. We always specify that because you tell people you're from Illinois, they automatically go to Chicago. And we in southern Illinois, we don't even claim Chicago. We're a different kind of people down in southern Illinois. But I was born and raised in a pastor's home. My dad was a Southern Baptist pastor for almost 60 years and pastored and preached around that area. And my mom, a pastor's wife, one of the most godly women I've ever known. There were 5 of us kids, and I was the oldest boy. My sister is a couple years older than me. We were raised in a great home. We didn't have much. We were poor, but we really didn't know we were poor. We had fun. We enjoyed life. My parents were a blast to be around. They were strict disciplinarians, but nevertheless, they made sure we had food on the table. We had clothes to wear. They may not have been designer clothes, but they were good clothes, and we had a roof over our heads. So, it was a good life. But raised in a pastor's home in southern Illinois, and a lot of coal mines, a lot of cornfields, and sports, athletics, basketball. It's a basketball country, but I played all the sports in high school: football, baseball, basketball. I ran track and field, set records in the long jump and the hurdles. I loved my life and enjoyed my life, and became a Christian at a very young age, at the age of 10, in my dad's church on a Sunday morning. I really got under conviction, realized that I was a sinner, that I could not save myself. And so that morning I turned to Jesus Christ and I asked him to come into my life and to save me, and he did, and changed my life. And I was so happy and excited about it. But then in my teenage years, I began to have some problems.
You took off at 16, ran away from home.
Yeah, I did. I started rebelling. None of my other brothers or sister rebelled at all. They were all the good kids, and part of it was I started hanging out with the wrong crowd. I tell parents all the time, you need to find out who your kids are hanging out with, where they're going, what they're doing. And every once in a while, I want to come with you, and they'll say, well, you mean I'm supposed to check up on them? I'll say, duh, that's what parents do. You're supposed to check up on your children. But I was sneaking behind my parents' back and doing things I shouldn't have been doing. And one day I came home from lunch. I was working at teeth tillers up on the square in the little town where I lived. And I went down to the basement. My mom was there where she had found a magazine that I wasn't supposed to have under my mattress. And I didn't even say a word. I just went back up. I asked them for my pay. I was making $1 an hour working at teeth tillers, putting the kitchen tables together and kitchen chairs. And they gave me my $40 on the way out of the store, the dry goods section. I swiped a pair of tennis shoes, and then I went out and I hitchhiked to East St. Louis. Took me 5 rides. It was a day when hitchhiking was a lot safer. And I got 5 rides, ended up in East St. Louis. Ollie, I didn't know anything about East St. Louis. I'd never hardly been out of my town, a little town of 3,000 people. We were all white county, all white town. East St. Louis was 95% black, and I could tell by the looks that people were giving me that Maybe I was in the wrong place, but I didn't know where to go. So I stayed in the hotel that night. $3 I paid for the room. And I asked the guy down the front desk where I could go get something to eat. And he said, young man, you're not leaving this hotel. You don't understand. We have a high crime area here. So, but I was gone for 2 weeks, and my mom and dad were praying for me and trusted that everything was all right. I actually went home on July the 4th, the day before my birthday. And my mom and dad reached out with arms wide open. You know, the prodigal son had come home, but I still wasn't right with God. I still wasn't right with authority, and my life was still messed up.
So why the Marine Corps?
Well, like I said, I was rebellious toward authority, high school, mom and dad, God, all of it. I ended up getting kicked out of college. I ended up getting fired from my job. My life was just a mess, a total mess. So I was walking down the street, my hometown, McLeansboro, Illinois, and I saw a sign that said the Marines are looking for a few good men. And I was so full of myself. I was so egotistical. I went in and told that recruiter that I had found what they were looking for. And I just said, I don't know where the rest of them are at, but here's one. And I joined the Marine Corps. And I tell young people all the time that I was tired of living at home. I was tired of being told what time to go to bed and what time to get out of bed and how to get my hair cut and what I could do and could not do. So I joined the United States Marine Corps. And I went out of the frying pan and straight into the fire. They put me on a Greyhound bus and they sent me to Parris Island, South Carolina. Of course, I got off, it's like 1:30 or 2 o'clock in the morning, and they come on that bus yelling and screaming, and we're so disoriented. We don't have a clue where we're at. They march us out and get us on those yellow footprints. And Colonel North, I was there less than 24 hours, and I decided I didn't like that guy, and he didn't like me, talking about the drill instructor, of course. And the reason that I didn't like him was because of he was in authority, and I didn't like authority. I was rebellious toward all authority. However, in boot camp, my attitude began to change. I ended up going to one-day motivation. I don't even know if they still have it today or not, but I got in some trouble. They sent me to one-day motivation. Old Skinny Sergeant Lunsford, whenever I got back, he brought me down in front of the entire platoon, and there were 4 other recruits and myself. And he started with me. He put his nose next to my nose, and he looked at me and he said, "The maggot." He called me a maggot. He said, "Are you motivated?" And at the top of my lungs, I hollered, "Sir, yes, sir." And he said, "Give me 20 push-ups." I gave him 25. I stood back up, my shoulders squared back, my feet out of 45-degree angle, my eyeballs looking straight ahead. He came over and put his nose next to my nose, and he said, "Hog." He called me a hog. He said, "Are you motivated?" Hey, I had never been so motivated in all my life. I didn't get my life right spiritually at that moment, but I tell you, it was a turning point in my life. I fell in love with the Marine Corps. I decided right then I wanted to be a Marine. I went into the Marines as a reservist. No one pulled any strings for me. I just went in and joined as a reservist. But right in the middle of boot camp, I told my drill instructor I didn't want to be a reservist. I wanted to be a full-time Marine. And they didn't even know if that could be done, but they did. They got the paperwork. I graduated from boot camp with a meritorious promotion. I was motivated. I went to ITR, the engineering school at Camp Lejeune, graduated with another meritorious promotion in less than 3 months. 2 meritorious promotions, almost unheard of in those days, but I was motivated. I wanted to be a Marine. I'd already decided I was going to be a Marine for the rest of my life. And then I received my orders that I was to go to South Vietnam.
You get over to Vietnam. What's going through your mind as you get off that airplane? Probably in Da Nang, huh?
Yes, we went to Okinawa at first for a couple of weeks, got all of our shots, and then we flew into Da Nang at nighttime. And you know, for a 19-year-old kid that's never been in any kind of a war zone, and you come in, you see these flares going off at nighttime all over the mountainsides and hillsides, and they're telling you as soon as you land, you get your gear, and they'll be telling you where to go, but you run as fast as you can. And, you know, it's scary for me, and I think it was for the rest of the Marines that were with me as well. We're all new. We're first time to be in the country, and I only did a couple of weeks of guard duty, and then it was hitting the field. We were building stuff as engineers. We were building bridges. We were building buildings, and tell people we built stuff and we blew stuff up. And we did a ton of mine sweeps on a regular basis. Some of them would last, 3 or 4 days, do the same mine sweep. Some of them would last for one particular mine sweep lasted 7 weeks. We do the same thing every morning and go out and clear that area so people could come through there and work could be done.
March 8th, 1971.
That was 50 years ago.
2 days
50
ago.
years ago.
Yeah.
And really, we never, for a long time, we didn't know what to do. My wife would like to honor the day somehow, but we didn't know what to call it. I was actually at Walter Reed and I heard someone use the word Life Day. And so I looked at Connie and I said, that's it. This is it. March the 8th is my life day. I lived that day when I should have died. I was leading my men on a mine sweep that morning. We didn't have any trouble. We found a couple of rounds. We detonated them. We stopped at noon hour to eat. My best friend in Nam was Corporal Lee Gore. Lee and I flew to Nam on the same plane. We were the best of friends. He was a Christian living for God. I was saved, at the age of 10, but as a teenager, I got my life messed up and got so far away from God. And he at noon hour, he offered to walk point for me. And I told him, I said, well, Lee, let me finish out the day. And then tomorrow you can walk point. We had some new men with us. And I remember how it was when I first got there. And the first mine sweep was, a lot of pressure and nerves. And so I was doing it basically to help a couple of these new Marines out, get the feel of the land. We walked that morning, no problem, stopped at noon hour to eat, and then we picked up where we left off from. 45 minutes later, I stepped on a 60-pound mine. It blew me several feet into the air, and it ripped both of my legs off of my body. I should have been killed instantly. It was a big enough mine to destroy a Jeep. We had entered a major minefield at the exact moment that I stepped on a mine. A South Korean Marine that was serving with us stepped on a mine and lost one of his legs. Our bulldozer driver set his blade down on a mine. And now we've got noise and chaos and confusion, smoke. And some of my men think we're taking on small arm fire. We weren't, but there was so much confusion, they thought it was happening. And I was in extreme pain. I was only unconscious for a couple of moments. I realized that I'd been hit, and I didn't know how serious it was, but I looked up and my head was laying in the lap of my best friend, Corporal Lee Gore. Lee had tears streaming down his face. In the midst of all the stuff around us, he was praying. And he was a prayer warrior. The guy prayed all the time, and he was praying out loud for God to help me. And I'll never forget it as long as I live. I prayed that day. I wanted to live. Somebody said you never lived till you've almost died. And I know what that means. I wanted to live. And I prayed a simple prayer: God, if you'll let me get back to my mom and dad, I'll do with my life what you want me to do. Well, I'd prayed a lot of prayers before, but I never meant it like I meant it that day. And they came with a medevac chopper, carried me to the hospital ship, USS Sanctuary. Second day I was on that ship, the wounds were so serious and the infections, they didn't think I was going to live. 2 weeks on the hospital ship, 2 weeks on the island of Guam, and again, several times when they didn't know whether I was going to live or die. I went from 187 pounds to 80 pounds. And then they brought me back to the States, to the Philadelphia Naval Hospital, where I spent the next 8 months. That was my home for 8 months. And we didn't have semi-private rooms. We didn't have private rooms. We had a Ward 1A in Philadelphia Naval Hospital. It was like a long hallway. And on one wall, there would be beds lined up and down that hall. And at any given time, there could be 20, 25, 30 minutes, 35 Marines on Ward 1A. If you were on Ward 1A, you were an amputee from Vietnam. 2 legs like myself, 1 leg, 2 legs, and an arm. And 8 long months, I never saw so much bitterness and so much anger, so much frustration. And I heard all the negative talk. And if I would have listened to all the negative stuff that was being told me, all the things I would never be able to do constantly, every day, you won't be able to do this, you won't be able to do this, you won't be able to do this. And if I would have listened to that, I wouldn't be here talking to you today. I'd probably be dead, or I'd be just sitting around feeling sorry for myself all the time. And yet I felt like God had let me live for a purpose. I wanted to live, and I've never been bitter. My wife would tell you, my children would tell you, if my mom and dad were still living, they would tell you, never once have I ever been bitter or angry about what happened to me on March the 8th. 1971. Every day I get up, I'm just glad I'm alive and that God spared my life.
Well, you spared you for a purpose. So
Yes, sir.
you got medically retired from the Marine Corps and went straight to seminary. Where'd you go from the
Well,
Corps?
I went back to my dad's church, and that's where I got most of my training in ministry. My dad was my mentor. I surrendered to preach, and I preached around Southern Illinois, Evansville, Indiana, St. Louis, Missouri area, all over that area. I mean, once the word got out, I was busy. People started calling me, and I was going somewhere every Sunday. And then I pastored for 5 years in Southern Illinois. And then on January 1st, 1979, I went into evangelism. And now we travel. I've got 6 million miles with American Airlines. I go across America nearly every week of the year in many, many foreign countries, preaching God's word. And my burden is to see people come to Christ, see lives change, to see America come back to God. So God did. He had a purpose for my life and a reason. One of the greatest opportunities God's ever given us is to go to Paris Island. We go to MCRD Paris Island every 12 to 13 weeks. And we have church on Sunday morning for an hour and a half to 2 hours. It is the most amazing thing. God opened up this door in 2013. We've been there now 28 times. And they called me the legend speaker. They told me I could come as long as I want to come. And it is a phenomenal opportunity. I would have never believed it, but God opened up that door.
Well, you've done great things, brother. Tim and I have been to Israel together. Tim and I have been to Alaska together. He's the only guy with no legs that I've ever hunted with that goes out after bears. And I just want you to know you have an incredible effect on showing people what a follower of Jesus Christ is really like. You've affected and inspired so many people who want to support your ministry and your evangelism. You tell them how to do it.
I appreciate that, Colonel. One thing they could do is go get my book, Born on the 5th of July. You wrote the foreword for that book. That is the best foreword in any book ever, I'm telling you. And they will love getting the book just to read your foreword. But they go to timlee.org, and then they'll find a lot of information about our ministry and what we're doing. And then they can order that book, Born on the 5th of July. And there was, of course, a movie called Born on the 4th of July. My story and his story are diametrically opposite of each other. And,
for sure.
And I've, like I said, never been bitter, never been angry, glad to be alive. And so we just decided to call it Born on the 5th of July. And we've had a tremendous response. The most common phrase, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people said, I couldn't put it down. And that's the kind of book it is. They couldn't put it down once they started reading it.
Tim Lee's story, Born on the 5th of July at timlee.org, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
God bless you, brother. Look forward to seeing you again in person soon.
Thank you, sir. Awesome. Love you, man.
Friend, if Tim's story has given you some hope or inspired you to be maybe a follower of Jesus Christ, maybe a U.S. Marine, maybe someone who's persevered, give me a subscription and let me know how you've been affected by this. And until next time, remember, Semper Fidelis is more than a slogan for U.S. Marines. Always faithful is a way of life.